Hello and welcome to Spectrum News, a recap of major stories within the week. I am Francis Adet, coming to you live from the beautiful hills of Ivorian. Let's take a look at the headlines. President Buhari condemns Southeast killings, asks public to provide information. Federal government rules out further borrowings to settle ASU. Plus, Palestinian commander killed as Israel strikes after militant threats. We will bring you details of these stories and more in a moment. First in the news within the week is a report that President Muhammadu Buhari has condemned the killing of non-indigenous and law enforcement officials by terrorists in the southeast. According to a statement signed by presidential spokesman Garba, the president vowed to undertake all possible action in conducting a speedy investigation to bring the perpetrators to justice. Shehu said the president's reaction came amid reports of the slaying of 6 Nigerian citizens and the brutal killing of a number of policemen at their duty post. Meanwhile, in a bid to ensure food sufficiency in the country, the federal government has begun the construction of Agricultural Machinery and Equipment Development Institute in Lafia, the Nasarawa state capital. The executive vice chairman of the National Agency for Science and Engineering Infrastructure, Mohammed Haruna, stated this during the groundbreaking ceremony of the institute. Haruna said citing the institute in Nasarawa state was part of the directive given to the agency by President Muhammadu Buhari to revolutionize farming and food processing using technology. He said the agency had succeeded in the development of some relevant equipment and machines in the food value chain, from cultivation, planting, weeding, harvesting, post-harvesting, and food preservation. On a sad note, President Muhammadu Buhari has joined family, friends and associates in mourning the death of former Inspector General of Police Mustapha Balogun. In a condolence message by Special Advisor on Media and Publicity Femi Adesina in Abuja, the President also commiserated with the Nigerian police force, where Balogun spent the better part of his life serving. The President recalled that Balogun, during his tenure as IGP, had a penchant for boosting the morale of officers and men in the force, acknowledged by those who served under him. According to the President, his thoughts and prayers are with the family, the government, and the people of Osun State, former colleagues of the deceased police chief, and his departed soul. In a separate development, President Muhammadu Buhari has congratulated 2 of his 8 senior special assistants on household and domestic matters, Sarki Abba, and the State Chief of Protocol, Lawal Kazore, on their conferment with Niger Republic's highest civilian national honors. The President's congratulatory message was released in a statement by Senior Special Assistant on Media and Publicity, Garba Shehu. The President, who received the awardees when they brought him the certificate and medals of honor, said he considered the honor as emblematic of the long-standing mutual friendship between the 2 nations and their people. President Buhari also extended felicitations to Governor Badaru Abubakar of Jigawa State, Mohammed Matawale of Zamfara State, as well as businessmen Aliko Dangote and Abdul Samal Rabiu, who were also conferred with the honors at the Independence Day ceremony. Away from that, the federal government has begun screening of 285 research and development proposals for the Nigeria Czech Republic 20.5 million naira grant for Nigerian scientists and engineers. These are in response to the government's call for submission of proposals through the National Agency for Science and Engineering Infrastructure and Government of Czech Republic's allocation of 20.5 million naira as grants to Nigerian researchers. The chief executive of the agency, Mohammed Haruna, made this known in Abuja at the assessment of the Delta II project. Committee members expected to make the final selection. He said the call for proposal, which commenced on May 18th and closed on July 17th, had a breakdown of 71 applications from the agricultural sector, 22 from mining, 181 from technology for SMEs development, and 11 multiple submissions. In education, the federal government has promised to include the security of schools in the 2023 budget. The Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning, Zainab Ahmed, made this known while speaking at the Safe Schools Summit organized by the Emergency Coordinator Center in Abuja. She noted that consultations were underway with states, local governments, and stakeholders to identify the most transparent, effective, and accountable ways of mobilizing and deploying resources. Ahmed also said the national financing plan for the security and safety of schools across the country would be unveiled before the end of the third quarter of this year. She added that the Federal Ministry of Finance, Budget and National Planning had established a committee with members drawn from the relevant ministries, departments, and agencies, including the Federal Ministry of Education, the military, and other security agencies for this purpose. Still in education, Minister of State for Labor and Employment, Festus Keyamo, says government will not allow the Academic Staff Union of Universities, ASU, to plunge it into another burden of borrowing. Keyamo made the remark during a televised interview today. He alleged that the federal government had explored all avenues to reach a truce, but the striking ASU members turned deaf ears. According to Keyamo, ASU failed to honor dialogue with the key stakeholders holding the purse of the federal government. In the meantime, the Joint Admissions and Matriculation Board JAMB has raised an alarm over a smear campaign against its management and officers. JAMB's head of public affairs and protocol, Fabian Benjamin, said the smear campaign was sponsored by those against the board's reforms, which had blocked their sources of illicit wealth. Benjamin alleged that those behind the falsehood were using a falseless non-governmental organization to circulate the allegations. Meanwhile, the zonal executives of National Association of Nigerian Students, Southwest Zone D, have debunked and disassociated the group from a report calling for the resignation of the Governor of Central Bank of Nigeria, Godwin Emefiele. Speaking at a press conference in Ibadan, leader of the Southwest Zone D of the association, Degbe Feyinfolawa, said it became necessary to debunk the report for the integrity of the leaders and the infallible personality of the CBN governor. Feyinfolawa said setting the record straight was also to protect Nigerian youths and students from the vices of information disorder that bedeviled the cyberspace in recent times. According to him, the said association chairman alleged to have signed the petition and not recognized executives of Southwest Zone of the association. In another development, the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, and the Nigerian Immigration Service are partnering to fight all forms of local or foreign involvement in economic and financial sabotage activities. EFCC Chairman Afo Rashid Bawa, who visited the Comptroller General of Immigration, Issa Idris, at the service's headquarters in Abuja, explained that his presence was to request deeper collaboration in the war against transnational crimes. In his remarks, Idris assured that the services would liaise with relevant agencies to protect and improve the Nigerian economy. He confirmed the installation of cutting-edge passenger clearance technological infrastructure that detects wanted or suspicious persons at border crossing points. Idris reiterated the need to sustain the cordial relationship between EFCC and the Immigration Service through regular interfaces and joint capacity building. In politics, the Independent National Electoral Commission (INEC) says extending the voter registration exercise will hamper its preparations for the 2023 general elections. This is according to the Akwa Ibom State Resident Electoral Commissioner Mike Igini, who spoke during an interview with journalists. Igini explained that the electoral umpire would also have to produce and distribute the permanent voter cards to the new registrants. The INEC Commissioner expressed satisfaction with the recent wave of enthusiasm by Nigerians in the electoral process, likening it to what happened in the country in the lead-up to the 1993 polls. Igini further said Nigerians should rather be concerned about voter turnout in the next election, despite the outcry that greeted the suspension of the registration. And back here, Senator Albert Basia Pan Oba has officially emerged the governorship candidate of the Young Progressives Party, YPP, exactly 5 days after the former candidate, Pastor Nyenime Andy, announced his voluntary resignation. A release signed by the YPP State Publicity Secretary Akan Emma noted that Senator Pan, who was the sole aspirant in the fresh primary ordered by the Independent National Electoral Commission (INEC), had emerged after all delegates from each local government filed out behind him. The primary, duly monitored by INEC, was in line with the 2022 Electoral Act, which stipulates that when a candidate voluntarily withdraws from an election, he should be substituted through a fresh primary within a specified time. At the end of the conduct of the primary, described as very peaceful, the National Secretary of YPP, Barrister Vidiyeno Bamiyi, announced the center as winner of the contest and decorated him with the party's regalia for candidates, including a certificate of return. In his acceptance speech, an elated Senator Pan promised not to disappoint his family, supporters, party, and entire state as the YPP gubernatorial candidate. He pledged to be one of the best governors Akwa Ibom has ever had when he wins at the poll next year. Aside from INEC, the event was witnessed by the national officers of YPP, leaders and members of Akwa Ibom campaign organization, Oba structure, his family members, friends and associates from across party lines in the state.
On behalf of my national chairman and leadership of the State Working Committee, I officially receive all the decampees. I understand that everyone in this arena has officially declared for YPP. Those who are declared, say aye. Aye.
It was started all through the 10 federal town hall meetings that after a Senegal district, it will be not only the turn of the Senegal district, it will be the turn of the Ivorian federal constituency for justice and equity. And this is based on the fact that 18 federal constituency have produced a governor. This is based on the fact that Uyo federal constituency have produced a governor. The only federal constituency that is yet to produce a governor in Uyo Senegal district is Ibrahima federal constituency. I have told God, I will fight the cause of my people. It was on the standpoint of justice that I stepped down in 2014. And I'm also running on the standpoint of justice that it is the turn of the Ibrahima federal constituency to produce a governor. I will fight your cause. I will fight your cause. And I will ask God to help me fight your cause. On my own, I can do nothing. But let it be said and let it be told that you had a senator who represented Uyo Senegal district effectively. You had a senator who was not disappointed at Akwa Ibom. And I will never disappoint. You had a senator who took care of his people to the best of his ability and capacity.
Well, The Young Progressives Party YPP has officially unveiled its deputy governorship candidate for the 2023 elections in the person of retired Assistant Inspector General of Police, Chief Asukwo Amba Awana. Speaking at the unveiling ceremony, the party's governorship candidate and member representing Akwa Ibom Northwest Senatorial District, Albert Basiakpan Oba, said his choice of running mate was based on the retired AIG's sterling performance and loyalty in serving Nigeria for 35 years. Our correspondent completes the story.
The Young Progressives Party YPP has officially declared its deputy governorship candidate in the person of retired Assistant Inspector General of Police, Chief Asukwo Amba Awana. The member representing Akwa Ibom Northwest Senatorial District and YPP's governorship candidate, Senator Albert Basi Akpan, popularly known as Oba, who unveiled his running mate, said his choice was based on the retired AIG sterling performance and loyalty in service for 35 years.
Deputy Governor is a man who has served this country meritoriously, who has served this country committedly, loyally, and passionately. After an extensive consultation with stakeholders in Akwa Ibom State, after an extensive consultation with our party hierarchy, after an extensive consultation with God Almighty, the incoming Deputy Governor of Akwa Ibom State and his dear wife, His Excellency, the Assistant Inspector General of Police retired, Asukwo Amba Awana, by the special grace of God, the incoming Deputy Governor, to go to the glory. Welcome, Your Excellency.
In response, retired AIG Chief Awana expressed his gratitude to Oba and the National Working Committee for the honor to be chosen and promised his loyalty and commitment to ensure the success of the party in the 2023 elections.
I am going to be a spectator. The only difference in my own spectator, that spectator is always to lead you to your destination. I will always ensure it gets to the destination.
Which took place at the party secretariat had in attendance all party stalwarts, as well as state and national House of Representatives candidates of the party. Edidion Martin, reporting for Spectrum Television.
And still to come in the news, Brent crude falls for second session to below $95 per barrel. To stay with us. Much thanks for staying with us. We move now to the African scene, where an ex-guerrilla and former mayor, Gustavo Petro, will be sworn in today as Colombia's first ever leftist president, with plans for profound reforms in a country bashed by economic inequality and drug violence. The former senator, 62 years old, takes over from the deeply unpopular Ivan Duque for a 4-year term, during which he will enjoy support from a left-leaning majority in Congress. Petro's hard-fought victory in June elections brought Colombia, long ruled by a conservative elite, into an expanding left-wing fold in Latin America that could be consolidated in October with a likely victory for Luis Inacio Lula da Silva in Brazil. At a ceremony in Bogota on the eve of his inauguration, Petro said his government would aim to bring to Colombia what it has never had for centuries, which is tranquility and peace. Still in Africa, Ivory Coast National Security Council says the 49 Ivorian soldiers arrested a month ago by Mali's transitional government are courageously enduring condition in detention. Mali's junta accused the Ivorian of being mercenaries coming to destabilize the country, but Ivory Coast said they were unjustly arrested as the authorities knew the soldiers were there for legal and regular reasons as part of logistical support for the UN mission. Ivorian embassy staff in Mali have met the 49 soldiers and later gave a statement saying they were in good spirit and had bravely endured the detention since July 3rd. Togo has offered to mediate between the two countries for the release of the Ivorian soldiers, but initial negotiations on July 28 in Lomé did not yield any progress. According to diplomatic sources, Mali is demanding the Ivory Coast acknowledge responsibility and express regret for the deployment of soldiers without a legal framework and prior notification or consultation with the Malian authorities. Bamako is also said to have asked Abidjan to hand over Malian personalities exiled in Ivory Coast and wanted in Mali conditions. They have been rejected. In Senegal, it is reportedly the first time since the country's independence in 1960 that the ruling party's group is losing its absolute majority in parliament. It will have to rely on other forces in parliament to pass legislations. Reports say the opposition had hoped the elections would impose cohabitation or divided government on Sall and curb any ambitions he may have for a third term. The main opposition coalition, Yewenwi, won 56 seats, while its ally, Wallu Senegal, won 24 seats. The Interior Ministry said the participation rate was 47%, as 7 million Senegalese were eligible to vote in the election to choose between 8 coalitions. For the final results to be declared by the Constitutional Council, the competing coalitions will be given time to voice any concerns. And elsewhere, a veteran Kenyan political leader and one-time Prime Minister Raila Odinga has cast himself as an anti-establishment firebrand despite belonging to one of the country's top political dynasties. Reports say his decision to strike an alliance with his arch-rival, President Uhuru Kenyatta, and secure the ruling party's backing has advised again for the top job in the August 9 elections, restaking the shine of his brand. According to reports, few expected Odinga and Kenyatta to shake hands and draw a line on the decades of vitriol in March 2018. Known universally as the handshake, the pact stunned Odinga's colleagues and supporters, effectively leaving Kenya without an opposition. On the foreign scene, the Israeli military says it is attacking targets in the Gaza Strip in response to threats from a Palestinian military group there. Gaza's health ministry said at least 8 Palestinians, including a child and a Palestinian Islamic Jihad commander, had been killed. It follows days of tensions after Israel arrested a senior Palestinian Islamic Jihad member in the occupied West Bank. The Gaza-based Palestinian Islamic Jihad had threatened to hit back by bombing central Israel. Israeli Prime Minister Yair Lapid said Israel would not allow terrorist organizations to set the agenda, adding that anyone who tried to harm Israel would be destroyed by the country's security forces. Still on the foreign scene, 3 more ships loaded with grain have sailed from Ukraine today under a UN-backed deal lifting Russia's blockade of the Black Sea. Turkey's defense ministry said the Panama-flagged Navy Star left Odessa for Ireland with 33,000 tons of grain. The ministry noted that 2 ships had left the port of Chronomax. The Malta-flagged Burgen headed to Britain with 13,000 tons of grains, and the Turkish-flagged Polonet sailed towards Turkey with 12,000 tons of grain. It added that an empty Barbados-flagged ship, the Fulmar, was headed to the port of Chronomax to load with grain. Meanwhile, Ukraine's southern frontline city of Mykolaiv will impose an unusually long curfew from tonight till Monday morning as authorities try to catch people collaborating with Russia. Governor of the Mykolaiv region, Vitaly Kim, confirmed this today. Mykolaiv, which has been shelled throughout Russia's invasion, lies close to the Russian-occupied parts of the strategically important region of Kherson, where Ukraine plans to conduct a counter-offensive. Kim told residents the curfew running from 11 p.m. tonight till 5 a.m. on Monday did not mean the city was under threat of facing a looming attack. Still on the crisis in Ukraine, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov says Moscow is ready to discuss prisoner exchanges with the United States through an existing diplomatic channel. Lavrov insisted that the discussion had to be within the framework of the channel that was agreed upon by Presidents Vladimir Putin and Joe Biden. It could be recalled that a Russian court had sentenced U.S. basketball star Brittany Griner to 9 years in prison and drug charges yesterday. His sentencing could now pave way for a U.S.-Russia prisoner swap that would include the 31-year-old athlete and a prolific Russian arms dealer. Away from that, Japan's Prime Minister Fumio Kishida has condemned China's firing of ballistic missiles during military drills around Taiwan, calling them a serious problem that impacts its national security and the safety of its citizens. Kishida was addressing reporters after meeting U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi for breakfast. He said 5 Chinese missiles appeared to have fallen in the country's exclusive economic zone, with 4 of those believed to have flown over Taiwan's main island. The Prime Minister added that China's action had serious impact on the peace and stability of the region and the international community. Pelosi was in Tokyo for the final leg of an Asian tour that included a stop in Taiwan, infuriating Beijing, which has launched its largest ever military drills around the South Roll Island in response. The 82-year-old politician had defied 10 threats from China to become the highest-profile U.S. official to visit Taiwan in years, saying her trip made it clear that the United States would not abandon a democratic ally. In a related development, China has announced it is sanctioning U.S. Speaker Nancy Pelosi and her immediate family over her visit to Taiwan. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi said Pelosi had interfered in China's international affairs, damaged China's sovereignty and territorial integrity, trampled on the One China principle, and threatened peace and stability in the Taiwan Strait. China reportedly sees Taiwan as a breakaway province that must be unified with the mainland by force if necessary. In the meantime, Chinese Vice Foreign Minister Xing Feng has summoned the diplomatic envoy of a group of 7 countries to lodge protests and representations over a statement made by a foreign minister of the group's member nations and the EU High Representative following U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's visit to Taiwan. Feng described Pelosi's visit to Taiwan as a blatant political manipulation and a flagrant and grave violation of China's sovereignty and territorial integrity. He said China would certainly not hesitate to make a firm response and that it was natural for China to counter the US and Taiwan's provocation. Feng accused the European side of falsely alleging that there was no change in the One China policies were applicable rather than dissuade and condemn the US actions of escalating tension across the Taiwan Strait and using Taiwan to contain China. Summoning the Canadian ambassador to China, Jim Nickel, Feng asked the Canadian side to immediately correct its alleged mistakes, stop using erroneous words and actions on the Taiwan question, or bear all the consequences. And elsewhere, Greece's conservative government was today rocked by a long-simmering surveillance scandal after its intelligence chief and close aide to Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis resigned in the space of an hour. Mitsotakis' office said Panagiotis Kingolion offered his resignation due to management errors during his time in the role. The announcement that Kingolion had resigned from his position as the head of National Intelligence Service came less than an hour after the Secretary General of the Prime Minister's office, Kyriakos Dimitridis, also quit. The resignation comes a week after the leader of the country's socialist opposition party, Nikos Abdulakis, filed a complaint with the Supreme Court over attempted spying on his mobile phone using Predator malware. The Greek journalists have also taken legal actions this year after they claim to have been victims of surveillance. To the United States now, where former President Donald Trump's legal team is in direct communication with the Justice Department officials. This is reportedly the first sign of talks between the two sides as the criminal probe into January 6, 2021 accelerates. The Trump team's discussion with the U.S. Attorney Office in Washington, D.C., which is in charge of the investigation, and stopped January 6 prosecutor Thomas Windham, with the talks revolving around whether Trump would be able to show conversations he had while he was president from federal investigators. Reports say at this stage the conversations are focused mostly on whether any communications those witnesses from the Trump West Wing had with the former president can be kept from a federal criminal grand jury under Trump's claims of executive privilege. The Justice Department had been anticipating a court fight with Trump over executive privilege. The issue as a reason his grand jury subpoenas have been issued to two former White House counsel's office officials and to former Vice President Mike Pence's chief counsel and chief of staff. On the business news, Nigeria's crude price benchmark Brent crude fell to below $95 per barrel, closing on the lowest level since February when Russia invaded Ukraine, as investors are coming to terms that higher interest rates and the global economic slowdown will heavily impact the demand. Environmental impact assessment data showed that U.S. crude stockpiles grew by about 4.5 million barrels last week, despite expectations for a 629,000 barrel decline. The same report also indicated that Americans are now driving less than they did in the summer of 2020, despite pandemic restrictions during that period, with surging inflation continuing to weigh on demand. Meanwhile, OPEC agreed to raise oil output by a small amount of 100,000 barrels a day in September and warned of severely limited spare capacity. Still in business, U.S. employers added more than 500,000 jobs in July and the unemployment rate dropped, defying fears that the labor market is heading for a slowdown. The jobless rate fell to 3.5% from 3.6% in June as restaurant, bars and other firms continue to add workers. According to data from the Labor Department, the growth was stronger than expected after recent data showed the U.S. economy continuing to shrink. The U.S. Central Bank is raising interest rates to control surging prices as higher borrowing costs reduce spending and economic activity. Meanwhile, top economic officials in the U.S. have said they hope the U.S. labor market will remain strong enough to allow the Federal Reserve to raise rates without triggering a recession. In the meantime, Nigerians who decided to buy dollars to make big gains have been left to count their losses in the last 3 days. Nigeria had opened the new week trading at 680 naira per dollar to 710 naira to a dollar, with many experts predicting it could even get worse. However, since the decision by the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission EFCC to raid several bureau de change hubs in Abuja, Lagos and Kano, the naira has made a big recovery on Thursday at the black market. Naira exchange at 640 naira per dollar and at 70 naira gain in 3 days. The sustenance of the recovery is questionable as foreign exchange demands for goods and services remains constant. Similarly, at the official market, data from FMDQ Securities show that the Nigerian currency strengthened on Thursday to settle at 428.12 to a dollar. And elsewhere, the Reserve Bank of India has raised its key repo rate by 50 basis points to 5.4% during its August meeting. This was the third rate hike in a row, surpassing markets' forecast of 35 basis points hike as policymakers tend to bring down inflation, which has stayed up this year. The decision followed a 50 basis points hike in June, bringing the rate to a level not seen since September 2019, as the central bank maintained its inflation forecast for the fiscal year of 2023 at 6.7% and its economic growth at 7.2%. The annual inflation is slightly to 7.01% in June of 2022 amid surging food prices. However, it remained above the Reserve Bank of India's target range of 2 to 6% for the 6 straight months. And still to come in the news, Edinburgh and Oborodu win wrestling gold at Commonwealth Games. To stay with us. Glad to have you back. In health, the United States government has declared the monkeypox outbreak a public health emergency following a spike in cases. The decision will speed up the distribution of vaccines, treatments, and federal resources to curb the spread of the virus. It comes less than a fortnight after the World Health Organization issued its highest emergency alert following a worldwide surge in cases. According to health officials, cases have topped 6,600 in the U.S., with a quarter of them appearing in the state of New York, which declared its own state of emergency over the disease last week. The two states with the next highest caseloads, California and Illinois, declared state of emergency earlier this week. Data from the U.S. Center for Disease Control and Prevention shows that more than 26,000 cases have been confirmed worldwide this year.
We can to end this outbreak. That is our commitment, and that's what we're going to make sure that we do that. So As you all know, the monkeypox outbreak has evolved rapidly and uniquely from prior outbreaks. So we are in a different, it's a different dynamic than it was the last couple times, because monkeypox has been here in this country before. And so we have aggressively responded at different stages of this outbreak. And so just wanted to give you a little bit of that context, because it's spreading at different phases here. So first,
in sports, wrestler Odunayo Adegroye has added to Nigerian's gold medal haul at the ongoing Commonwealth Games, defeating her Indian opponent Anshu Malik 6-4 in the 57-kilogram freestyle category. Two-time reigning Commonwealth Games champion Adegroye was better than Malik, who had won her earlier 2 rounds within a minute. En route to the final, the reigning African champion defeated Canadian Hannah Taylor in the semis in a 10-0 victory. Also, wrestler Blessing Oborodudu won a gold today, increasing Nigeria's gold medals to 7. Oborodudu had defeated Linda Maurice in the 68-kilogram women's category final. Still in sports, Alexandra Yusuk's rematch against Anthony Joshua will be available to watch for free on August 20th to fans living in war-torn Ukraine. This is according to boxing promoter Alex Krazuk, who said Saudi Arabian organizers had gifted the TV rights to Yusuk's home country as a gesture of goodwill. Ukraine is still engulfed in an attack which began in February 14th by Ukraine. In another development, Polish striker Robert Lewandowski has been unveiled to the Barcelona fans at the Camp Nou. Lewandowski was presented as Barcelona's new number 9 following his £50 million transfer from Bayern Munich. Reports say the European highest goal scorer has inherited the iconic jersey from Memphis Depay, who has been linked with a Camp Nou exit following Lewandowski's transfer. Meanwhile, Lewandowski turned 34 later this month, but dismissed any suggestion that his best years were behind him at his first press conference at Barca Stadium, even though he did not hit the net for the club in pre-season. Meanwhile, Chelsea have signed Spanish defender Marc from Premier League rivals Brighton on a 6-year contract. No fee was announced, but reports have valued the deal at £60 million. The 24-year-old should now be available for Chelsea's Premier League opener away from Everton. The Spain wing-back has now become Chelsea's latest pre-season signing, with Khalidou Koulibaly, Raheem Sterling and Carney Chukwuemeka all having arrived at Stamford Bridge. And elsewhere, Mbappe will miss Paris Saint-Germain's first League One outing of the new season this weekend against Ceremony Clermont with an abductor injury. The PSG announced that Mbappe had been left out of the squad that would travel to Clermont for last weekend game due to the pain in his abductor muscles and will instead remain behind for treatment. Mbappe already missed PSG 4-0 win over Nantes in the French season opening Champions Trophy in Tel Aviv, Israel last weekend due to a suspension carried over from the last campaign. PSG began their defense of the League One title with a new coach, Christophe Galtier, having taken over from the sacked Mauricio Pochettino. Lionel Messi and Neymar, who both scored against Nantes, are in the squad, along with new signings Vitinha, Hongo Ekitike, and Nodi Mukele. On our entertainment news, Beyoncé has earned her 4th UK #1 album with Renaissance, a heartfelt love letter to house and dance music. The official chart says the album outsold its nearest competition by 3-1 to reach the summit. It follows the star's previous chart toppers Dangerously in Love 2003, 4 2011, and Lemonade 2016. She also made #1 as part of Destiny's Child on the 2001 album Survivor. Renaissance were also the week's biggest seller on vinyl. The album has also topped the charts in Australia, Ireland, and France, and is predicted to have the biggest opening week of the year in the US. Still in entertainment, thousands of performers from across the world are in Edinburgh for the start of the world's biggest arts festival. The Edinburgh Festival Fringe will see more than 3,000 shows from 58 countries mark its 75th anniversary. Its lineup will include comedians Frankie Boyle, Stewart Lee, and Al Murray. The Edinburgh Military Tattoos returned, while the Edinburgh International Festival will see live audiences return to indoor venues. The Fleabag star, who is president of the Edinburgh Festival Fringe Society, Phoebe Waller-Bridge, said its new vision would make the whole event more inclusive and accessible. Away from that, Warner Bros. Bosses have announced that they are restructuring the firm to focus on DC superheroes movies in the hope of emulating the success of rivals Marvel. This week, the company scrapped the new Batgirl film months before it's released. A new 10-year plan was revealed at the entertainment and film company's Q2 earnings report. Chief Executive David Zaslav said the company wanted to protect the DC brand by focusing on the quality of forthcoming big-screen blockbusters. Zaslav, who heads up the newly merger Warner Discover, said the company's main objective was now to grow the DC brand and characters. And finally, a miniature manuscript written by a 13-year-old Charlotte Bronte has come on public display after being returned to her West Yorkshire home. The 15-page book, smaller than a playing card, is dated December 1829, stitched in its original brown paper covers, and contains 10 poems. It was purchased by a charity for £973,000 in April and donated to the Bronte Parsonage Museum. Principal curator of the museum in Harwood, Anne Dinsdale, said at the time of the donation she was absolutely thrilled at the book's return. And that's all we have for you at this time. Do ensure to follow us on social media and subscribe to our YouTube channel, all of which you can find on our website, spectrumtv.ng. You've been watching a recap of the major stories in Spectrum News. I am Francis Edit. Do enjoy the rest of your weekend.